Over the past 2 decades, the United States has planned and carried out the removal of nearly 850 dams in an effort to restore natural river systems. Among these projects, the removal of the 2 dams on the Elwha River is widely regarded as the largest dam removal project in the world, with a total cost of approximately $324 million. Once celebrated as symbols of industrial progress, these dams eventually became major barriers that fragmented ecosystems, blocked the migration routes of aquatic species, and contributed to the decline of biodiversity. Their removal was not simply an engineering decision. It was a large-scale environmental restoration effort aimed at bringing an entire river back to life. In this video, join Mandarin Tech as we explore the dam removal process and the remarkable journey to restore an ecosystem that was on the verge of disappearing. Project Overview. The Elwha River was once one of the most important salmon migration routes in the Pacific Northwest. For thousands of years, salmon swam upstream from the ocean to spawn in the cold waters of the river's upper reaches. The 2 dams were built in 1913 to provide electricity for local industries and communities. However, the large reservoirs created behind the dams completely blocked the salmon's natural migration route. Over nearly a century, salmon populations declined dramatically. At the same time, millions of cubic meters of sediment that would normally have been carried downstream became trapped in the reservoirs. This altered the river's natural structure and affected downstream and coastal ecosystems. By the early 21st century, the cost of upgrading the aging dams to meet modern environmental requirements had become extremely high. Instead of continuing to maintain the structures, managers chose a far more ambitious solution: removing the dams entirely. The challenge was figuring out how to restore the river's natural flow while avoiding severe impacts on the downstream ecosystem. Dam removal. For the Elwha Dam system, engineers could not simply demolish the structures in a single event. If they had done so, tens of millions of cubic meters of water, along with an enormous volume of sediment that had accumulated over nearly a century, would have rushed downstream in a very short period of time. The result could have been severe flooding and extensive damage to aquatic habitats. As a result, a phased removal strategy was chosen to minimize risks to both people and the ecosystem. First, temporary access roads were built to allow excavators, hydraulic drills, and concrete cutting equipment to reach the dam structures. Engineers then began removing the tops of the dams. Construction crews used rock breakers, high-powered hydraulic hammers, and carefully controlled explosives to cut away concrete sections weighing dozens of tons each. Only a few meters of the structure were removed at a time to carefully control the rate at which reservoir water levels dropped. Lowering the water level gradually provided several important benefits. Instead of creating a sudden flood wave, water was released in stages, giving downstream environments time to adjust. At the same time, the sediment that had accumulated behind the dams for decades could be transported downstream little by little rather than all at once. Throughout the removal process, scientists continuously monitored water turbidity, sediment transport rates, and fish population responses. This information was used to adjust construction activities and ensure that the river restoration proceeded as safely as possible. The blow-and-go strategy. Meanwhile, the Condit Dam project followed a completely different approach. Removing a massive man-made reservoir required far stricter engineering standards than demolishing an ordinary structure. The biggest challenge was dealing with the millions of cubic meters of sediment that had accumulated on the reservoir floor, forming layers dozens of meters thick. In theory, dredging the sediment with heavy machinery was considered the safest option. However, field studies showed that the process could take as long as 10 years to complete. At the same time, releasing the sediment gradually over such a long period would severely damage the respiratory systems of aquatic life. As a result, engineers designed an extremely bold solution known as blow and go. They decided to excavate a 4.5-meter wide drainage tunnel through the strongest part of the dam's foundation. Construction crews worked continuously for months under the enormous pressure of the reservoir suspended directly above them. Using specialized tunneling equipment, they drilled deep into the heavily reinforced concrete structure. The excavation stopped only when the tunnel face was about 1 meter away from the reservoir water. Engineers then packed more than 300 kilograms of high-powered industrial explosives into the remaining thin layer of concrete. Once detonated, the pressure from the tens of millions of cubic meters of water behind the dam would create an enormous physical force, much like a man-made flash flood. That force would tear through the final barrier and carry nearly 2.4 million cubic meters of compacted sediment into the Columbia River Basin within just a few hours. Removing the dam structures. Once the reservoirs had been completely drained, construction crews brought in heavy excavators, hydraulic breakers, and dump trucks to dismantle the remaining sections of the dams. Instead of demolishing the massive concrete structures all at once, the dams were broken apart piece by piece. This approach gave engineers greater control over changes in river flow, reduced the risk of erosion, and prevented large amounts of sediment from being released too quickly. After being broken into smaller sections, the concrete was loaded onto trucks and transported to processing or recycling facilities. However, not all of the demolished material was removed from the site. Some of the concrete was crushed and reused as fill material to stabilize the ground and restore the landscape in areas that had once been covered by the reservoirs. This significantly reduced the amount of material that had to be transported while also minimizing the project's environmental impact. At the same time, engineers had to remove another structure that received far less attention but played an equally important role. It was a temporary rock and timber cofferdam that had been built to divert the river during the original dam construction nearly a century earlier. Hidden beneath the reservoir for decades, it was exposed only after the water had completely receded. Although much smaller than the main dam, the temporary structure still blocked the river and prevented aquatic species from moving freely upstream. Removing it entirely was essential to allow salmon and other fish to once again reach their traditional spawning grounds. Only after both the main dam and the temporary diversion structure had been removed was the river fully reconnected and able to flow naturally once again. The sediment layer. Throughout the dam's operation, everything carried downstream from the upper river was trapped behind the concrete wall, slowly building up year after year. Instead of continuing downstream, this material settled on the reservoir floor, forming sediment layers several meters thick. Over time, these layers became increasingly unstable because they were no longer being dispersed and reshaped by the river's natural current. When the reservoir was drained for the dam removal process, the sediment that had accumulated over decades began to change rapidly. Large sections of mud cracked, collapsed, and were carried away by the flowing water. Within a short period of time, the river turned a cloudy brown as the amount of suspended sediment increased sharply. In some areas, the water became so turbid that it was almost impossible to see the riverbed or objects beneath the surface. This raised serious concerns among local residents and environmental groups. They feared that the enormous amount of mud and silt would reduce water quality, harm aquatic life, and negatively affect downstream areas. However, ecologists argued that this was an unavoidable transition phase. In reality, much of the fine sediment was carried downstream by the river and eventually entered the Columbia River system. At the same time, clean layers of gravel and cobble gradually reappeared on the riverbed. This was especially important because salmon usually choose gravel beds with good water flow to dig their nests and lay their eggs. The return of the salmon. Before the dams were built, the Elwha River was one of the region's most important biological corridors. Every year, around 400,000 salmon migrated upstream from the Pacific Ocean to their spawning grounds. After the dams blocked the river, the salmon population declined dramatically. By 2011, fewer than 4,000 fish were returning each year, a decline of more than 99%. What surprised scientists the most after the dams were removed was how quickly nature began to recover. Just 1 year after the demolition, researchers recorded salmon returning to sections of the upper river that had been inaccessible for nearly a century. As the river flowed freely once again, newly formed gravel bars quickly became ideal spawning habitat. This was an important sign that the river ecosystem was recovering in the right direction. The return of the salmon also demonstrated that their migratory instinct had remained remarkably strong across generations. Their powerful leaps through fast-moving water became a symbol of the river's recovery. Today, as the ecosystem has gradually stabilized, more than 6,000 salmon return to spawn in the Elwha River each season. For the indigenous communities of the region, this recovery meant far more than an environmental success. Salmon have long been an essential part of their culture, traditions, and way of life. The return of the fish marked not only the restoration of a river ecosystem, but also the revival of a cultural heritage that had been interrupted for generations. Ecosystem recovery. The return of the salmon was not just the story of a fish species finding its way home. It also awakened an entire ecosystem that had been divided and weakened for nearly a century. As salmon began to reappear in the upper stretches of the river that had once been blocked by the dams, positive changes started to spread throughout the surrounding environment. What makes salmon especially important is that they carry nutrients from the ocean deep into the land. They spend most of their lives at sea, storing nitrogen, phosphorus, and many other nutrients in their bodies. During the spawning season, they travel long distances upstream to return to the place where they were born. After completing their life cycle, their bodies decompose, releasing those nutrients back into the river and the land along its banks. As a result, plants and many other forms of life benefit from this natural source of nourishment. Studies have shown that riverside forests with salmon are often greener and grow more strongly because of these marine-derived nutrients. The return of salmon also provides an abundant food source for many animals. Aquatic insects thrive as water conditions improve, creating a foundation for the growth of small fish populations and river birds. Alongside this natural recovery, humans also helped support the ecosystem. During the early years of restoration, native plants were seeded and planted across areas that had once been the reservoir floor, helping to stabilize the soil and reduce erosion. Over time, land that had once been covered in mud, gravel, and exposed sediment gradually turned green. What was once the scar of a demolished structure has now become clear evidence of nature's remarkable resilience. Challenges after restoration. However, the recovery of the Elwha River has not been without challenges. As increasing numbers of salmon returned, the flow of nutrients through the ecosystem changed significantly, forcing many species and surrounding habitats to gradually adapt to the new conditions. As mud, sand, and organic material were carried downstream, the river remained cloudy for an extended period. In some areas, heavy sediment deposition reshaped the riverbed and altered habitats for aquatic species. At the same time, the decomposition of disturbed organic matter reduced dissolved oxygen levels in the water, placing additional stress on fish and other organisms that are sensitive to water quality. Beyond sediment-related issues, reconnecting the river also introduced new biological challenges. Once the river was reopened, not only salmon but also other fish species were able to reach areas that had previously been inaccessible. If left unmanaged, some of these species could compete for food and spawning habitat or even threaten native species that were still in the process of recovering. Meanwhile, resource managers have had to balance the conservation of wild salmon with the continued role of hatchery support programs. This demonstrates that ecosystem restoration does not end when a dam is removed. The river needs time to restore its natural processes. Wildlife needs time to adapt, and the entire ecosystem needs time to regain its natural balance. Not every river can be restored the way the Elwha River was. The case of the Snake River shows that the challenge is sometimes not engineering, but finding the right balance between ecological restoration and human development. Along the lower Snake River, 4 large dams were built in a series. These structures generate electricity, support inland navigation, provide irrigation water, and play a vital role in the region's economy. As a result, each dam is both an essential part of the infrastructure system and a major obstacle to the migration of salmon. Resource managers have implemented a variety of measures to reduce their impact. Fish passage systems were constructed to help salmon move past the massive concrete barriers. Even so, salmon populations have continued to decline. This has led to an ongoing question: is removing the dams the only effective solution? The debate is no longer just about engineering. It is about how society chooses to balance environmental conservation with the economic benefits that have been built over decades. To this day, it remains one of the most complex and controversial environmental debates in the United States. Conclusion: the removal of these dams shows that sometimes the best way to restore nature is not to build something new, but to remove barriers that have existed for too long. Once the dams were gone, the river and its ecosystem began to recover quickly, revealing nature's powerful ability to heal itself. But this also raises an important question. If a structure once brought economic benefits but has caused long-term damage to the environment, should it continue to be maintained, or should it be removed so nature can begin to recover? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow Mandarin Tech to discover more impressive engineering projects around the world.